Back when I was student teaching, there was a kid who wouldn't do anything. He wouldn't write, he wouldn't read, he barely spoke. On paper, he was the definition of unmotivated, but he knew everything about a pretty popular video game on a Nintendo Switch at the time, which was Super Smash Bros. He knew every character, every moveset, frame data, combos, matchup knowledge, the kind of encyclopedic recall that would have made him a straight-A student in a subject that didn't exist yet. I made an offhand comment about a character one day. That character I remember specifically was Sonic the Hedgehog, and I was talking about how he's meta. And he corrected me instantly, and for the first time all semester, he actually looked at me. That was the whole opening. One shared interest, and suddenly a kid who wouldn't do anything had something to say about everything. Same kid, same brain, different task. I've watched some version of this play out 1,000 times since, over 7 years, and roughly 1,000 middle schoolers that have walked through my classroom. And for a long time, I explained it the way most people do. Whether they're talking about a student, an employee, a teenager, or a kid who won't clean their room. He just doesn't care. No work ethic. He's lazy. But lazy doesn't explain a kid who can recite frame data for 40 characters unprompted. This isn't really a story about a video game or even about teaching. It's about a question that applies just as much to a manager wondering why a good employee suddenly checked out, or a parent wondering why their kid will practice free throws for hours but won't touch their homework. Something is turning motivation on and off in the same person, and it usually is an effort, and it isn't personality. I don't think motivation is something people have. I think it's something environments create. And after years of watching this up close, I think the real answer isn't motivation at all. It's ownership. Here's where we're going with this. And I promise this applies whether you're raising a kid, managing a team, running a classroom, or just trying to figure out why you can't make yourself start something you know matters. By the end, I think you'll stop reaching for lazy as an explanation for other people, and probably for yourself too. If Steve Jobs had been in my classroom, a lot of adults would have written him off, myself included. He was bored easily, he challenged authority, he had tons of pranks that he would do in class, questioned everything, not exactly a model student. But then Apple started building the Apple II, and a different person shows up. Personal computers at the time looked like what they were. They were boxy, cold, covered in screws. They were functional, but they weren't inviting. Jobs wanted one smooth case, clean lines, something you'd actually want in your living room. That part makes sense. Here's the part that stopped me. Jobs became obsessed with something nobody using the computer would ever see: the motherboard, the internal layout. One engineer basically asked why they were wasting time making the inside beautiful. Nobody opens the case. Nobody will ever know. Jobs disagreed, and the reason traces back to his childhood. His father, Paul Jobs, was a mechanic and a carpenter who taught Steve to build things properly, even the parts no one would ever see. When they built a cabinet together, Paul insisted on quality wood for the back panel, the side that would spend its whole life facing a wall. Steve asked why. His father's answer? Because you'll know it's there. That's the whole idea. No audience, no grade, no bonus. Jobs cared because he owned it, and ownership changes people. That story rewired how I look at my classroom, and honestly, at people in general. I'm not saying every 7th grader is secretly Steve Jobs. Some of them can't hold onto a pencil for more than 8 seconds. But the pattern held, and it wasn't unique to kids. The people who look unmotivated aren't unmotivated everywhere. They're selective. The employee who can't get a report done writes a full essay in a group chat. The teenager who won't clean his room can name every stat on a character he's never even unlocked. So what changes? My best answer comes from one of my favorite units, a vinyl album project. Students pick an album they actually care about, not one I assign. The second they choose it, the project stops being mine and it becomes theirs. From there, they analyze the album for a central theme, using lyrics as evidence. Then they redesign the album cover to visually represent that theme. And they get to choose that. Then they defend their design choices in writing, why the colors matter, why the symbols matter, how it all connects back to the lyrics. Academically, this isn't easier. It's theme analysis, textual evidence, argumentation, and visual reasoning. Real English work. It just doesn't feel like a worksheet. It feels like making something. And that changes everything. The kid who doesn't write suddenly has opinions about font choice. The kid who doesn't care is debating whether the background should be darker because the album feels more isolated and depressing. Psychologists have a name for part of what's happening here. It's called self-determination theory. The short version, and it's a simplified version, researchers still argue over how far it generalizes, is that people become internally motivated when 3 needs are met: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. Control, capability, and connection. The album project hits all 3 almost by accident. They choose the album, and that's autonomy. They have structure and a clear path to improve. That's competence. And the music already matters to them, so we got relatedness. The assignment didn't get easier, it became theirs. Ownership alone isn't enough, though. You can hand someone a project that feels personal, and they still might not do anything with it. That's where expectations come in, and where jobs shows back up. People called his management style the reality distortion field. I said that weird. His ability to make impossible things feel achievable. Absurd deadlines, unrealistic designs, and people kept meeting them. That's the interesting part. Not that he demanded great work. Lots of people do that. The interesting part is that people delivered it. Expectations change behavior. When someone expects more from you, they give you better feedback, more chances, more attention to your potential instead of your mistakes. This isn't a classroom-only phenomenon. It's why a good manager gets more out of a team than a mediocre one with the same people, and why a kid can tell within a week whether the coach believes in them or thinks that they're not good enough. Kids feel the opposite just as clearly. They know when an adult has already decided who they are, the same way an employee knows when a boss has already written them off. There's a name for this too. I think this is how it's pronounced, but the Pygmalion Effect, the idea that expectations shape performance. It's not magic. It works because belief changes how people treat each other. If I expect a student to do better, I push for a revision instead of accepting the first draft. A manager who expects more assigns the stretch project instead of quietly routing around someone. High expectations aren't the same as being harsh, even though Steve Jobs, his work environment was super harsh. There's a lot of criticism on it, but low expectations aren't the same as being kind. Early in my career, I confused the two. I'd let work slide because I liked a kid, or I knew that they were struggling or had some issues at home, and I told myself that was compassion. Looking back, it usually wasn't. It was giving up with softer language. Ownership says, this belongs to you. Expectation says, so make it represent you well. The more I taught, the clearer this got. People are more motivated by creating something than by completing something. Kids in a classroom, sure, but this is also anyone at a desk job, in a marriage, raising a family. A lot of school runs on completion. Finish the worksheet, answer the questions, then move on. There's a place for that. Reps matter, boring skills matter. I'm not disqualifying that. But when everything is completion, school turns into a checklist, and what is the goal of a checklist? It is to make it disappear. How many sentences does this need to be? Isn't always laziness. Sometimes it's a survival strategy. It's the same instinct behind an employee asking, is this good enough to submit? Instead of, is this good? Creation flips the goal. Students stop trying to make the assignment disappear and start trying to make something exist. I've watched a kid who rushes through every question suddenly spend 10 minutes adjusting one image. Because now, they're not answering me, they're representing themselves. That's what made the Apple II resonate. Jobs wasn't following a rubric. He was asking a question school rarely asks. What do I want this to say? We default to what's the right answer and how many points is this worth? Creation asks something else entirely. What are you trying to make and whose fingerprints are on it? This isn't unique to 12-year-olds. It's why adults build gaming PCs. They garden, mod games, spend 3 hours picking a paint color. On paper, some of it is pointless. Emotionally, it isn't. It's ownership, wearing a different outfit. Here's where people usually take this too far. Hearing choice and ownership and assuming it means kids or employees or anyone should just do whatever they want. It doesn't. Ownership doesn't remove discipline, it requires it. If something belongs to you, the quality is yours. You don't get to hide behind, I just did what I was told. That's the pressure side of ownership, and it's the side people conveniently skip. Whether they're talking about parenting, or coaching, or running a team, I've made both mistakes. Over-controlling and under-holding accountable. People need voice and boundaries, grace and follow-through. Sometimes the most caring thing a teacher, a parent, or a manager can say is, no, that's not your best. That's harder than it sounds when you care about the relationship. But there's a real difference between supporting a student and quietly removing every expectation from their life. Kids can tell the difference between an adult helping them climb and one who's deciding they can't. James Clear's line from Atomic Habits fits perfectly here. A goal is what you want. A system is what actually gets you there. Ownership gives the work meaning. Discipline gives it shape. And discipline is what gets a kid through the ugly middle, the messy first draft, the design that doesn't look right yet, instead of quitting the moment it stops feeling good. So here is where I've landed. Motivation isn't the thing worth chasing. It's inconsistent, it's emotional, it's dependent on sleep and stress and whether a 7th grader ate anything besides Takis at lunch. I swear, that's all they eat. If your whole system depends on feeling motivated, it collapses. For kids, for adults, for everyone, it doesn't matter. The better question isn't how do I motivate people, it's what makes people take ownership. Motivation says I'll work when I feel like it. Ownership says this represents me. That's why Jobs cares about a motherboard nobody would see. It's why a kid will defend a font choice on an album cover he picked himself. The work isn't easier, it just finally belongs to somebody. And here's the part that actually bothers me about the word lazy. And it ends the conversation before it even starts. It means we stop asking whether someone feels capable, whether they have any control, whether they've only ever experienced failure at this particular thing. Most of the time, the truth isn't that people won't try, it's that they would rather look lazy than look like they tried and weren't good enough. Doesn't that represent so many of us? I've watched the trade happen 100 times, in classrooms, everywhere else. It's not a kid problem, it's a person problem. That kid who knew everything about Super Smash Bros. And nothing about writing, he came around, slowly, and not because I found some perfect trick, because I stopped seeing unmotivated and started asking what he already cared enough to be great at, and built from there. He probably doesn't remember me, I still remember him. Not because of what he wrote that year, because of what he taught me about everyone I'd go on to teach after him, and honestly, about everyone that I've met since.